Hello there, I'm Drew.
I'm Becky.
We are talking about the best moments of Game of Thrones today. We've kind of done, a series. This is going to be our main series wrap up for this entire great show of Game of Thrones because we've done the last episode. We did a hero's journey episode about Jaime and Arya, which I uploaded recently.
Woohoo!
But also, because there's a lot we could complain about the last season and stuff, but the way I look at it, we'll always have the first 5 seasons of pretty solid, consistent, great television, even season 6 too.
Okay. Yeah, I thought season 7 was really good as well. And even though I understand the people who said that it moved too fast, the pace was very different than what had come before it, but I thought it was really exciting. So for me personally, the fact that the final season and the final episode didn't really hit all the buttons, that's okay. I think you're exactly right that it was still a great TV show and I enjoyed it so much, and there are so many things I'll remember and probably rewatch in the future. And I wouldn't even be against I've seen the whole thing now 3 times, most of it, and some of it much more than that. And I don't know, I can definitely see myself maybe a year from now going back and starting over and watching it all again.
Because there's 70 hours of this plus. And it's all pretty good, It's a shame the last season kind of tarnished, give everyone a bad taste in their mouth to kind of finish the whole thing. But like I said, we'll always have the first 6 seasons of this show, which is pretty good. So we're talking about just our favorite moments personally and stuff, because there's some really great, whatever you'll say about the double Ds and all the coffee cups and all the condiments that were probably in the scenes and stuff and whatever. The acting and the characters and the casting has always been pretty solid. It's always been pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there were so many moments that I do just love rewatching, and so many parts of seasons. Like I can see myself even now wanting to rewatch things. And I've done that by looking at things on the internet, like every time, all of the Hound's comments, all of the Hound's insults.
All of his roasts. Have you watched that video?
Yes.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's awesome. And every time he was on the screen, it made me happy. And so there's so much to really appreciate and be happy that we had a chance to see. I think because you're right, the actors, for the most part, were excellent. The writing, for the most part, was excellent, and there is just a lot to really appreciate about a show that a lot of people loved, and they loved it for a lot of different reasons, and I think that's really a sign of a good TV show.
Also, the fact that this cast is so huge. I think about shows in the past, even some Lost, who both shall not be named, or Walking Dead. This is a huge cast. This is 40, 50 people tops of everyone who has speaking lines and stuff. It's a pretty big cast, and it's pretty great overall. So, first season 1, we're going to go be season by season here. So, season 1, I loved it when, second episode of the series, you're kind of are all the Lannisters bad? Is Tyrion actually a bad guy? But then he slaps Joffrey twice.
No, that is so
In the
great.
book, he only slaps him once, but in the show, he's you cannot slap me. He slaps him again. Tyrion, Peter Dinklage almost jumps in midair and then slaps him again. It's so good.
Oh, yeah, it was...
The boy means nothing to me.
Yeah, and you didn't even know how bad Joffrey was going to end up being at that point, but it was still very satisfying to see Tyrion stand up to his little temper tantrum. So, yeah, I loved that. And I think from that point on, I really, really liked Tyrion. Before that, you're right, I wasn't quite sure what to make of him. And he wasn't really quite what he would become yet by a long shot either, but he did show in that scene that he had a lot of backbone and didn't care who Joffrey was.
Didn't care about a lot of things, because it's great because people like Jon Snow, people like Sansa, were always so trepidatious, if I may use a word for the day. We're always very careful about their words and loyalty and all that kind of stuff, but Tyrion was always so great because he was a dwarf. He didn't care about being ostracized by society because he didn't care.
Because he already was.
He already was. So he could
Right.
say whatever the heck he wanted
Right.
and just get away with it, which is always so great to have, Eddard Stark being yes, my lord, of course, my king, you, and kneeing before Robert Baratheon when he's offered the job of the Hand of the King. But then Tyrion be I don't care, I'm a loose cannon. He was always great.
Yeah, and wasn't it in that second episode also, it was either the second or the third one, where Tyrion is talking to Jon, and where he has the line about bastards and broken things, but he is told, and that may come a little later, but when he tells Jon that you are a bastard, you may as well own it, because if you own it, other people can't use it against you.
Use it as armor.
Yeah, which is obviously what Tyrion has learned to do.
A great moment, and of course that was reciprocated in season 7, when Tyrion sends that letter to Jon and says all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes,
right?
Which is what he said to him. That way Jon knows that that letter was sent by Tyrion.
It's really Tyrion,
which
right.
is also always a cool callback, and which is great lines, and Peter Dinklage's course kills it. Another great scene from season 1. Feel free to stop me from anything in between you remember. But Robert talks about his first kill to Barristan Selmy and Jaime. I love it because it's repeated in later seasons. So Robert says, like, I was in a field and a Tyrell boy looked like tried to kill me. A highborn thought he could end the rebellion with one swing of a sword. And he talks to then I crushed Rhaegar's chest, and gods I was strong. Robert was always a very good character in my opinion. Broken guy, but very good. I loved it how he said that, and then Jaime in season 7, like an idiot, thought he could end the whole war with one spear.
Yes,
as a one-handed man on horseback trying to kill
right.
Dany when Drogon was injured.
I was trying to end this whole thing with that, that one act. And so there were a lot of things throughout the seasons like that sort of reminded you of other things that had come before and other things that characters had said or done. And of course, we do kind of find out later that Robert tended to do a lot of boasting, and that maybe not everything happened the way that he said, but he certainly was a guy who was much better at fighting and winning the throne than he was at actually ruling. And that's a point I think that they make at some point.
There's different, I'm pretty sure they said it to Dany at one point. There's a difference between being a conqueror and being a ruler.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we saw so little of Robert, and he was always entertaining. And that first season as well is when he can't wear his armor when he wants to take part in the tournament.
Get the armor stretcher.
Is that Lancel?
Lancel. What gods? What a stupid name.
So Robert was always, it is kind of, I don't know how the story could have continued with him still in it, but he was always entertaining when he was on screen. And Mark Addy, I think, is the guy who played him, is a really good actor that I have seen in a lot of things, and I did not recognize him as Robert.
Yeah, I saw an interview with him looking back on his role in the series. He was bald completely and had a bit like an egg face, but obviously had a huge mame of beard and stuff in the show.
Yeah.
Man, that actor totally nailed it and stuff. There's also this talk right now between Robert and Cersei, where he says you want to know what the saddest thing is? I can't even remember what she looked like. Seven, all I ever wanted was to marry Lyanna Stark, and 7 kingdoms couldn't fill the void that she left behind. Their marriage was never made out of love. So for those two people, two human broken characters to talk hey, we were married, but you were never really a good husband. And she says at one point, what's the one thing keeping the whole kingdom together? She's like, our marriage. And he bursts out laughing in the most roarous, audacious laugh.
Right.
It's just a good moment that I loved it. These two people, they were never really friends or respected each other, but they're just having this moment to realize that they both have something in common of we both know this is a sham, so we might as well have a good laugh over it,
Yeah, and it's also very painful because I think that throughout the series there's some evidence that had Robert loved Cersei, that maybe she wouldn't have turned into the person she became, a little bit at least.
Because of course, yeah, she even says was I ever a real queen for you, or whatever she said. She's was it ever real at all? And he's he says very coldly, no, you never meant anything to me,
right.
Which is a very sad thing for him to admit. He's honest about it, and she asked him straight up, and I'm sure she expected that answer, but still sad to hear out loud to the person you're married to be I never cared about you.
I really felt like that was one of perhaps only a couple of moments in the whole series where Cersei actually felt something. I think that hurt her, that really wounded her. And when she's also in season 1 related to those two characters, and she talks to Catelyn about losing her first baby. Her first baby was born, and later on, you don't realize how important it is until later, but she talks about the first baby she had having a head of black hair and then dying. And it seems that she never really got over that. And I remember thinking at the time, because she was telling Catelyn this story while they were there with Bran when he was in his coma, and she was the cause of Bran being there in the coma, I was wondering, well, is she just making this whole thing up? But I really think not. I think that her first baby was actually Robert's baby, and that maybe she was open to, if Robert loved her, or if maybe she was capable of love even at that point, and then lost that baby, and I think it hurt her very much. So I can't believe I'm saying anything sympathetic about Cersei, but we are thinking about back then in the first season, and sort of these little flashes we got into her character that maybe said she didn't have to end up the way she ended up.
Yeah, just she was always just very complicated, like her brother. She's an interesting character, I'll give her that. Another great scene from season 1. Just great, like, also like classic history repeating itself that's happened. For example, Gendry, there's a great Twitter that's like a, classic picture that has words over where it's like Gendry looking all smug saying like, hey, at least I slept with one more Stark than my father ever did. You know what I mean? Because like Gendry wanted to marry Arya, just like his father wanted to marry Lyanna. And of course Ned said like, oh, you look just like my sister Lyanna, Arya, which is a cool history repeating itself. Also, Jory Castle, I don't know if you remember him.
Yes.
He talked with Jaime for like 6 seconds, like two soldiers talking. They're like, oh yeah, we fought at the Battle of the Pike when we invaded Pike. Do you remember when Thoros of Myr and his flaming sword, he stormed the gates of the siege of Pike Stronghold? It was crazy. Like two soldiers reminiscing. And then at one point, Jaime just flips. He's like, okay, see you later, nerd. Like, it was a great moment, but also Jory said, like, oh, yeah, the scar next to my eye, and Ironborn nearly took out my eye. And then, like, an episode later, Jaime stabbed Jory through the eye socket and killed him.
Yes.
Which is a good, like, callback / foreshadowing. But foreshadowing is not character development. Danny did not do go evil. And, but I love that foreshadowing. Jaime's always been awesome. The fact that Jaime had that moment with Jory where, like, they had this moment sincerely between two men who were soldiers who had to kill. Like, yeah, that was crazy, wasn't it? Well, see you later, nerd. Yeah. I'm better than you. I'm a sir. You know, like it's cool because a general and a private in an army can have a conversation like, oh yeah, I remember my first time killing a man. Well, see you later.
And they still remember the battle, but Jaime was so smug at that point. He couldn't take it. He couldn't be nice. He was very smug.
It's also cool seeing the budget of the show like shift.
Oh,
like, I remember when Ned was executed, there's supposed to be like a huge CGI set to Baylor behind him, but like it was super small because they didn't have the budget back then. They just had to film in Croatia. Everything. It kind of like almost like a weird filter over it the whole season. But obviously it's cool to look back and be like, oh yeah, this show had only a $10 million budget as opposed to a $90,000 million budget.
It changed a lot.
Hey, no coffee cups, though. Sweet.
Yes.
Season 2, Tyrion saves Sansa from being beaten by Meryn Trant / Joffrey. Everyone, just like Jaime ironically says this later on in Season 6, Meryn Trant with a stupid Meryn Trant face says, are you threatening the king? And he's like, no, I'm merely simply giving my nephew some advice. Bronn, if Sir Meryn talks again, cut out his tongue. Now that's a threat. Great moment because like it's good. It was always fun to see Tyrion, be a bad guy with the Lannisters, but still be like, he's not gonna let Sansa be beaten for no reason,
Yeah, and he definitely had a good heart.
Like the Hound once said to Arya, "A man's gotta have a code."
Yes,
and Tyrion always had that consistency.
Right, absolutely. Because even though he was out drinking and knowing things, as he put it later, he definitely did not think it was okay to go around hitting women or forcing yourself on them, and he had no problem if it was all willing and consensual or he was paying for it, but he just didn't think they should be treated that way, and he was not afraid to stand up for them.
Another great Tyrion slap moment. So after the big riot happened where you remember that riot that happened where someone throws poop at Joffrey and stuff, and they just a bunch of commoners surround a rich nobleman and they just rip his arm off in 6 seconds. That was kind of weird.
I was wondering always, every time I see them, how did they
got their hacksaws ready? I guess the poor people,
the whole arm, bone and all. I don't understand.
But at one point, Tyrion's like, "You lost Sansa," and Joffrey's like, "I am your king. You cannot talk to me this way." Then Tyrion just absolutely slaps him in the face again. He's like, "I just slapped the king. Did my hand fall off my wrist?" Tyrion always slapping Joffrey's always been so great.
Oh,
And
yeah, just absolutely awesome. Anytime Joffrey got something he deserved, and that look in his eye was just, his eyes was always horrible. And you always wanted to slap him, or I did watching the show. I always wanted to slap Joffrey. So when Tyrion did it on my behalf, I appreciated that. And I mean, that was just showing what a coward and a little baby that Joffrey was.
that like he got slapped, but he was like, I'm gonna stop talking now.
And he wouldn't protect Sansa, and he wanted whoever threw that at him to be executed. And
they're just like, they're hungry, they're starving, you
Right,
fool. You know,
yeah.
we've had an idiot king, we've had a mad king, but we never had an idiot mad king before. You cannot talk to me, I'm your king. Slap to the face. It's all great too because like the guy who plays Joffrey obviously nails it. He's such a good actor, being that little piece of crap that he is.
I don't think I could ever watch him in anything else, or not for a very long time.
Yeah, let him get some facial hair and become
Make him look
Home Alone
completely
style,
different.
long hair,
Right.
you know, because he's a great actor. I love Tyrion slapping him in the face. Season 2, also, I really enjoyed all Tywin's talk of Arya because there have been some classic villains on the show, you know, very much unlike the Night King, where it's like he represents climate change. Like people like Roose Bolton and Tywin Lannister, they were bad people, but like Tyrion says, like put all the bodies that Cersei and Tywin did over their entire lifetimes, it wouldn't amount to what Dany did just now.
Right.
In season 8, he said that because Tywin Lannister, he had his code. He would definitely burn down any other house as long as House Lannister still survives. But you know, he wasn't the worst guy. But it was cool him talking to Arya, where like he talks like, "Oh, I've always wondered what's best for my kids, and I had to teach Jaime because he was dyslexic how to read properly." Because it's cool, obviously, just to see someone who's like, you know, a quote-unquote bad guy who's fighting against the Starks. Like, you know, he's a complicated guy as well, and he cares about his family, and his family is all he's ever going to care about.
Right. And and he's not cruel to people, like the fact that he takes Arya in and lets her be the cupbearer, really as a way of protecting her. And I think that you see a side of him, especially at that point, that although he was very cruel to Tyrion, he's not generally cruel to everyone. And the people that he has killed, it's been in war, and it's been for a reason, and he's been defending either his family or his king. And I really thought that although deep down he was pretty much a snake, as we found out more later, that the way he interacted with Arya definitely showed a side of him that I didn't really expect. We hadn't seen him much at that point, but I did not expect to see that side of him.
Yeah, I remember because Gendry's about to get his chest about to get eaten by a rat with a bucket fire torture method, and then he rocks up and he's like, Arya's like looking at Needle with like that jerk Lannister soldier, and he's like, "Oh boy, I got an accident. What are you looking at?" And he's like, "That's a girl, dummy."
I know.
And like,
so he had keen observation skills.
it's cool
right?
because Tywin too, like he said, like you said, like he's willing to do anything for his house, and even Jaime, when he's on trial in season 8, says like, Sansa says, you tried to kill my father in the street, and Jaime's like, we were at war, I would do it again for my house, I don't have to apologize for that.
Right.
It's like just like Tywin, like, I don't care if I have to kill all the House Stark at a Frey wedding, like this is what I'm going to do to save my house, and I did it.
Yes.
I'm Tywin Lannister.
Yep.
Boosh.
Yep.
Season 2, anything else? What else we got
when
here?
was the comet?
The comment. Beginning of season 2, ending of season 1, perhaps.
Okay. I love the comet, and you know they never referenced it again. But when
That was weird.
Yeah, when they see it, they say, "Oh, it means dragons were being born. A red one means dragons are being born," which it turned out it did. And I loved Osha.
Oh yeah, because the comet is actually in the new intro for season 8. It has like when it shows like the golden plaque images of like the Night King destroying the wall, the Frey wedding, and then the Red Wedding, as it's often called. But then it shows the Mother of Dragons and a comet in the sky and the 3 baby dragons, which is
right.
Danny. Yeah. Oh yeah, I forget about that. But then I'm like, oh yeah, comets.
Yeah, I liked that a lot, just because I really like comets and other things in the sky. Yeah, I thought I'd be remiss not mentioning Osha because she did not last very long, but at the time she appeared and the things that she did, she was one of my favorite characters.
She was
at
cool.
that point.
Do you know the actress is Hispanic or something?
I have no idea.
I saw her on
why.
a Spanish talk show.
Oh, really?
And I didn't understand any of it because I don't speak Spanish, but
Oh, wow.
she's very fluent. So I don't know if she was
Well,
Hispanic
she may
or...
have actually been from Spain. I mean, the cast was definitely from a lot of different parts of Europe. I mean, it wasn't a terribly diverse cast, but
Ethnically, but
right. But I
nationally.
don't see very many people on TV from Denmark. You know, for example, like
Such as Nicolaj Castor-Watow.
Yeah, so that's yeah.
That's Jamie.
So, right. And then also somebody else was from Denmark or anyway.
Oh,
but-
I think Euron was from Denmark.
yes. But yeah, I really liked her character, and I thought the actress did a great job with it and the way that she changed over time.
Who?
So,
Which actress?
Osha.
Osha, yeah. She was.
Yeah.
It was kind of lame how she just got killed by Ramsay Bolton like in season 6 because they forgot about her character.
Yeah. But I did definitely think that she played an important role within the show, and especially as a mother figure to Rickon, and a little bit to Bran. You know, he was a
Slightly.
little older.
I
but
think season
anyway.
2 overall is kind of underrated because it's kind of like a lot of good world building in season 2 and some more setup for things to come. But yeah, I love the Hound still being with the Lannisters. He's like when he fights the Battle of Blackwater, he's like, "F the King's God, F
Right.
the city, F the King."
Yes, I'm done with this. I'm out of here. And then he stops though to try to get Sansa to come with him.
Yeah, which is really weird because it's like Sansa. I remember watching the scene again. Like Sansa turns on the light in her room, whatever, and she clearly walks by this huge man sitting on the edge of her bed. Like it's not Batman darkness. Like he's right there. But also I like any man who dies with a clean sword, I'll rape his effing corpse. Like it's just him being so. I always love the Hound.
Well, right, and at the Battle of Blackwater is when he threatens them about the fire. If that fire
comes near me. I'll strangle you for your own guts. Season 3, another pretty good season. I feel like it's kind of weird, like looking back on these seasons, be like, season 2, Battle of Blackwater happened. Season 3, Red Wedding happened. Anything else happened in season 3 that was significant? Oh yes, Tyrion married Sansa semi against his will. But he got drunk at his own wedding and threatened to cut off Joffrey's manhood and like stab the table.
And then had to laugh like he was joking.
I mean, it's just my nephew. I loved it when like Joffrey would be like, "What did you just say to your king?" And then like Tyrion would always be like, "Well, I'm just a logical man. I don't know," and able to stick out of it. But also when he went to the bedchamber for the consummation ceremony, whatever, with Sansa, and he's like, "Yeah, I will not. You he was drunk. I will not share your bed unless you want me to." And Sansa's like, "What if I never want you to?" And he says, "Then my watch begins," and he taps out on the couch.
Right. There were a couple of things about that. First, I was terrified the first time I saw it that Joffrey was going to come in there and rape her.
Oh, yeah.
And I kept thinking, Tyrion, stop drinking so much. Stop drinking so much. You'll
Oh,
be
no,
passed out.
yeah.
Yeah. But thank goodness that did not happen. Also, the other thing, though, was because of the way that he says it to her, "I will not share your bed." And I think he says something like, "Until you invite me to," or something. And then that exchange takes place. Well, what if I never do? And he says, "Well, you know." So I really always hoped that meant something, like that they would end up together at the end. And I thought that would have been a great callback if she had said, "Hey, Tyrion, come on over." But no, that didn't happen. So unfortunately.
She don't need no man. She's the
That's
queen
right.
of the north.
Well, and that's okay. I like that, but it would have been kind of a nice callback, I thought, because I always remembered that. I mean, because he didn't have to say it that way. He could have said, "I will never." He didn't have to say it that way. Just I won't do this while you're so young.
Easy
or we
catch,
won't
I
until
don't
you
know.
want to. Right, or until you want to, or something. But the way it was worded, it just kind of made me wonder, and it was always in the back of my head.
For them to have like a nice talk in season 8, be like, "Hey,
Yes,
you
yeah.
were the best Lannister ever," and he's like, "That's not saying much, but thank you."
Right. Yeah, that's the low was pretty bar. The low was pretty bar.
Which one? You mean the
bar is pretty
bastards or the
low.
people who have sex with their
Right,
siblings?
Right. Yeah.
Also, season 3. What else happened? I love the Blackfish. At one point, he says, "I've had wet shits I've liked more than Walder Frey." They talk about having Edmure marry him.
Yes.
Edmure also being a dumb fool.
Oh.
And at one point when they said like, Edmure, you will marry the Frey daughter, and he's like, but I don't want to get married. I want to go to Tasha's power station and get some power converters. But Edmure Tully at one point even asks like, have you seen the Frey girls? Like he asked what they look like, which is always was kind of dumb. I loved how also in a good moment of Edmure just messing up, he like missed like 3 shots
At
when he's trying to light
the
his
funeral pyre, right,
for his own
it's-
father.
Right, before it's about to go over the waterfall or whatever and
Such
be
a
out
great-
of sight forever.
Such a great scene too of like the Blackfish coming in, looking at the wind, shooting one arrow, walking away, and then it hits the boat and catches the
Right.
fire. Like the perfect explanation of like this family. Like he's the messed up younger brother who always messes up, and here's the wise uncle who does
Yes,
it, gets stuff done. You know?
Which is why one of the reasons I loved so much, because we didn't see a whole lot of Edmure. There are very few Edmure scenes during the entire series, and I thought because of what a buffoon he was when he couldn't, he shot and shot and shot and couldn't hit the funeral pyre, that is one reason I loved when Sansa tells him to sit down later in season 8. Sit
Get
down,
wrecked.
Uncle. But because he was just a goofball, just a real idiot.
It's nice to have people like Mace Tyrell, who I bet you don't even remember, like that guy with the weird mustache.
Yeah,
who's like
yes,
from Phantom
I
Menace.
know, yeah.
Like
I know who
take Mace
Mace was.
Tyrell and Edmure to be like, yeah, these lords who are born in the family, it's like they can be idiots, you know. Like, luckily
Yeah.
we have people like Tyrion who's able to be smart and have logic, but there are
Right.
people who are idiots like Lancel Lannister and all these.
Yeah, I mean,
dummies.
because people like Edmure, I guess physically Edmure could hit people and hurt people, but I think as was shown again in season 8 when he tripped trying to sit back down or whatever, he was not really very physically commanding, and he was not real smart, and if everybody in the
Quite
show
the looker, though.
was Edmure,
I don't know.
I mean, he wasn't not cute, but I don't know. I never really.
Sorry, continue.
That's okay. But not every guy in the show was a knight. Not everybody was strong, and not everybody was a tactician and this kind of thing. Yeah, there are the family buffoons, and Edmure was a buffoon, and I think Mace was too, based on the things Lady Olenna said about it.
Yeah, Lady Olenna, Queen of Thorns, one time said, "Oh, excuse me." Cersei was like, "Oh yes, Mace Tyrell. He laid siege to Storm's End during the Targaryen rule," and she's like, "Laid siege more to the banquet table, perhaps."
Yeah, he's pretty much a joke.
But it's also funny to see like these people who are idiots like are born into families and just become a leader of their house based on merit. So like Mace Tyrell never did a thing in his life probably.
Yes,
But
yeah.
his mother was the one who got stuff done, just like the
Right.
Blackfish got stuff done for the younger, dumber generation.
Right, and definitely Lady Olenna was running things, even though in name it was Mace, but obviously it was
Mace
really her.
Windu from Star No.
that's
Mace
right,
Tyrell.
Mace Windu, Lenda Clarician, which
Um,
I say just because I like to say it. Lenda Clarician.
Season 3 also Daenerys begins her insatiable bloodlust as she burns the slave masters and gets the Unsullied army. That was pretty sweet. That's when the first things of like the thug glasses slowly descending onto Dany's head. You know the thug glasses,
Yes,
thug
yes.
life. It's very funny because that scene was like the guy who was like making all these gross jokes about her in his different language, like even not even being subtle. He's like he's being so unsubtle about it. He's like pointing to her and like talking to his friend, being like, "Hey, what's up?" But the fact that she's like, "I know you are a slaver. Also, I heard all those mean things you
Right,
said
all
about
that
me."
stuff you
I'm like,
said.
he's a slaver. I guess him being a misogynist is bad too. But being a literal slaver who tortures people, I guess, is bad. But the fact that that's when even Drogon being a tiny being like a Rottweiler-sized dragon, like he there's this great shot. I remember like he's just flying by like a balcony and just torching nobles
Right,
as he
right.
goes. Like that's like her first time she said Dracarys, and I remember mentioning this to you a while ago. But did you recognize and like Dany's theme when like Drogon would breathe fire? It's the
Not until you mentioned it, but then when I rewatched some scenes, I remembered it, and I even remembered commenting on it after when she burned the she burned all the people when they kidnapped her and took her.
Vase
Yes,
Dothrak.
that place, yes. And I remember thinking, oh wow, listen to that music. But now I know what you're talking about.
But what do you think?
because I
Do you think
watched
it's
some things.
cheesy? I've heard some
No,
people say that.
I like it.
I think it's
like
dope.
It was
It's like a
pretty
sweet.
cool.
It's a bass drop. It's like here comes a bass drop.
Yes.
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah. And I did remember saying something about it the first time I saw that scene where she burned, because she was throwing over the fire that was providing the light, right?
The
in big
braziers.
lantern.
So Danny doing that in season 3 was like the first time she like did something with her power and with her wits and with her technology and for dragons and stuff. Technology. She's like it's a good time where like she's not just like burning a magic wizard with 3 baby dragons. She's like, here's my plan. You need to have faith in me, Barristan and Jorah. It was a good moment. Season 3, Tywin said this after Joffrey says like, I'm going to serve Sansa her brother's head at my wedding. He's like, you can't do that. And he's like, I can do anything. I am king. And Tywin says, any man who must say I am king is no true king.
I love that line. I love the way Tywin was the only one who could even come close to keeping Joffrey in line.
Charles Dance is always the actor who plays Tywin is so good.
Yes, yeah, he was really good. Have you seen him he's pretty old, so he's probably been around a long time.
I haven't seen him in anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, almost none of these people had I ever seen before. And like I said, Mark Addy, who played Robert Baratheon, I knew him well, but was too stupid to recognize him. So, so most of them were all new to me, and because most of them it was really their first role for all the kids. But
yeah, and seeing Tywin just put Joffrey in his place. At one point, Joffrey's like, well, why wasn't I informed about this beforehand, grandfather? He's like, you're being informed at this very
you're being
moment.
Informed now. Yeah, because he wasn't going to put up with any of Joffrey's crap.
And the great quote, Jorah Mormont, there's a beast in every man, and it stirs when you put a sword in his hand.
Whoa.
So, like, he's saying that to Danny, talking about Unsullied and about how, like, the Unsullied won't rape and pillage King's Landing and sack it like other armies will. Hint, hint, don't hire the Dothraki.
Right.
But the fact that he says that is like, it is, when you think about it, there's a beast in every man, and it stirs when you put a sword in his hand. There's a beast in everyone, and when you put him or her on the back of a flaming dragon, a nuclear weapon.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And that is true. The Unsullied can't rape people, but they can do all of that other stuff. And,
combat and stuff, like, and the fact that like they won't like sack a city just for funsies,
right,
they won't do it for kicks.
Well, yeah, but I'm not so sure about that, and that I think that's Jorah's point, right? Is that you put the sword in their hand and you don't really know.
I think we're off of season 3. Season 3 was pretty good. Obviously, the big climax is the Red Wedding, which was pretty terrible and the worst thing that ever happened on television, probably plot wise. Like that's, I mean. I remember the Double D's wanted to make the show just because of that scene to be like, holy crap.
They wanted to get that far.
That is something that happens in a TV show.
But, it's not at the end. I think it's in episode 3 of the season.
No, it's 9, isn't it? Of season 3? Yeah, Reigns of Castamere.
I don't know. Yeah, I love that song. And as soon as it started playing, I realized what was up. But remember, I had not watched this as it was on originally. And it was impossible to not have heard about the Red Wedding. Okay, so I knew that the Red Wedding happened. I didn't know exactly who was killed because the characters weren't familiar to me when I read about it. Because I even read an article about it. And I knew that at some point there would be something where a lot of people would die at a wedding. But in my mind, I thought it was in King's Landing. So that was really good because when I was watching that episode, it was almost like I didn't know about the Red Wedding at all because I didn't expect this to be it. And then when they shut those doors and they started playing the Reigns of Castamere, and Catelyn looks up at the orchestra, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember when I was 13, I heard about the Red Wedding just, coming up on Twitter, everywhere on the YouTube and stuff. I'm like, I want to watch this scene out of context.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, this is a dark show.
Right. And it is. But I was really glad that I didn't know. And it was only after several people were killed that I was like, this must be the Red Wedding. Because I thought it happened in King's Landing, but this would appear to be it. So it was kind of nice to not have, even though it was spoiled in a sense, to not have it completely spoiled.
What else happened in season 3? Because I remember, like, there was the whole thing of, like, Cersei was supposed to marry Loras Tyrell, but she never did. Because Tyrion was supposed to marry Sansa first.
Right.
That was also a great scene, too, when they had, like, the High Council / family meeting powwow, when Tywin's like, Tyrion, you will marry this Stark girl. He's like, but Dad, I don't want to. And he's like, you will because you're my son, and you have to. And then Cersei does like the whole like putting antlers on her fingers, tips, and head, going like, "Ha ha, you have to marry Sansa." And then Tywin turns to Cersei like, "Oh, but don't worry, daughter, I have a plan for you too. You will marry Loras Tyrell." And she's like, "But I don't wanna." That was a great moment because like they were acting like children. They're like,
Right.
But and then Charles Dance, just Tywin's like, "You will do what I tell you." That was such a funny moment too, because just seeing Cersei's face fall like, "Hey, hey," and just be like, "Bleh."
Yep, there's a plan for you too, and you won't like it either.
Tywin and Olenna talking was always fun as well, because like Olenna and Tywin and Roose Bolton, Tywin and Olenna have always been like, the head of the house. They've lived through some stuff in their lives, and they're just trying to make their houses survive this crazy tumultuous time in the world.
And every time Olenna was on screen, it was awesome.
So season 3, I think it's a wrap up there. Season 4, Oberyn Martell was I loved the actor, the way he talks. He's like, "I came to Dorne because I want to tell you something, that I'm here to go to kill the mountain." And like, what's his name? Pedro Pascal.
Yes.
I love him so much.
He was good.
He's like his kind of thing where it's like he's not like a hot 10 out of 10 Jaime Lannister, but he's just such a charming, he's such an attractive, he's a cool guy,
right, Yeah. Well, and I love the way that he sneaks in the city. That's really probably one of my favorite moments is when Tyrion goes out to greet them and he's not with them. And they realize that he managed to sneak into the city.
He comes into the room and like as he comes to the room, Oberyn's just stabbing a Lannister through the hand. And he's like, just like the fact that Oberyn, even in that episode, basically gives all the exposition like, "Oh, the mountain killed my sister Elia Martell. I want to revenge." The fact that like he's in King's Landing where there are spies everywhere, but he doesn't give a crap what people think about him. He's openly, homosexual, which is awesome in this world where like, people like the High Septon were able to like, "Hey, that's against the laws of gods and men, Loras Tyrell or Lancel Tyrell or whatever." But the fact that he was so brazen, he was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And because it's pretty unnerving. You can tell by the way Tyrion reacts when he finds out that he's in town that there could be a problem. But then they come to the wedding and she's got on her little bikini top thing at the wedding because they're from Dorne and they don't wear, it's too hot there to wear clothes. So the way they interact with everybody, it's very fun and different. It's like, okay, well, if I was going to live here, I would live in Dorne.
Yeah, it looks like an awesome place. He had a great talk of Tyrion where he talks about how he met Tyrion when he was a kid.
Oh, right.
Remember that? He said like, they talked about the terrible devil that was born at Casterly Rock. But then I saw you. You weren't even a monster at all. You were just, maybe your head was a little too big, but you were just a little baby. And like Cersei like pinched your little cock. I thought you'd rip it off. Like the fact that Cersei was just a jerk, even when, because Tyrion did kill his mom.
Yes.
Did kill their mom. But the fact that Oberyn was so cool. Such great lines. Like at one point when he visits Tyrion in the cell, he's like, "If you came looking for justice, you came to the wrong place."
Right.
And Oberyn tried his best to get justice for his sister, and like, what a perfect character. Like he was there for like 8 episodes, and that was it. But he was
very memorable,
great, memorable guy, man. He was, and the fact that he went out, he came in and died in such a memorable, terrible way.
Yes,
getting his head bashed in. But the fact that he was able to, I don't know if he did his own stunts with all the mountain versus Viper battle, but it looked so like he did like the Ray Parker, Darth Maul spinning the spear around himself, and he did the whole Father the Bride, whatever it's called. You killed my mother, not prepared to die, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I read an interview with him and actually an article where they talked about the choreography for that whole fight and everything. And he did a lot of it, but there was some of it he couldn't do, and obviously he couldn't have his head smashed in, for example. So they built his head, and with the eye hanging out.
Painted a watermelon.
Right. And he said it was really weird to see his head that way. Very bizarre. But he did quite a bit of it. He did as much as I think anybody could be expected to do. And that was why they were able to make it look so good, because they didn't have to cut away as much as they would have if he hadn't been able to do a lot of it. So I think that fight was just massive. And I just really was, I wanted him to just stop it.
I mean, it's a way to go out,
Yes.
of like his head being crushed like a walnut.
Right.
But yeah, season 4, pretty good. I loved seeing Joffrey die. That was pretty sweet. He was like, "It's fine," and then washes down more poison as he tries to eat his pie or whatever. Seeing Joffrey die was awesome because he was a total jerk. Tyrion's speech at his trial was pretty great. I didn't kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had.
Yeah, it
Because
was.
it's just a great
good.
moment for him to be like, I've been on trial for being a dwarf my whole life, and like, screw you, you're okay, screw you, see you later. I demand trial by combat. What up? And he's like, just.
Well, and the look on his face when they brought in Shay.
Ugh.
That was just heartbreaking. I mean, his heart was broken and my heart was broken, and Peter Dinklage is just an amazing actor. And I don't know. Well, I guess he gets his due because every year that he could have won an Emmy for Game of Thrones, he has, I think. So
It's cool because, like, he's obviously a dwarf or whatever you want, a little person, whatever, in real life.
Yes.
And, like, it's because you could say he's born for the role, like, out of anybody in the whole world. Because, like, anybody could probably play Luke Skywalker. But, the fact that he's a shorter man is the fact that he was perfect for this role. And even if he, like, wasn't a good actor or anything, like, he's a good actor for this role. Like, he plays Tyrion just like the books that I've been reading, don't mean to brag, but he just does it so well. Like,
yes. Yeah, he's a really good actor. I mean, he had other parts. I knew who he was before the show. And other things I had seen him in. He was in a TV show that didn't last very long.
He was an elf.
Yes, he was an elf, but he was in a TV show where he played, like, an IT guy. It was a drama. And it was just coincidental that he was a little person. It had nothing to do with him being little. And he was just a character in the show. And I've seen interviews with him about why he initially didn't want to talk to them about Game of Thrones was because so much of the time a little person is treated a certain way in fantasy, like with stereotypes and all sorts of things, and then he just loved the part. So yeah, he's absolutely perfect for it, but he has done other roles that were not related at all to the fact that he's a little person. So so good for him, and I can't wait to see what else he does.
Looking back at all this, season 4 might have been one of the best seasons.
I
because
think so.
The whole trip of Arya and the Hound had so many great moments. At one point, it kills me every time I watch this. She says, like, he stole my sword. That's Polliver. He stole my sword. He also killed Lummy. He says, what the F's a Lummy? And says it in the most deadpan, not blinking, not looking to his left. Like the fact they were looking through bushes, but it's a perfect hole for him. A 6-foot tall man, a perfect hole for her. A 5'1" girl, or whatever.
Yeah, their road trip was amazing. And when they come up on that house where they have dinner with the people, and, and the guy, is praying before dinner, and he says, "Are you gonna go through all of the effers?" Isn't that what he said?
All of the gods and stuff. Like, we pray for the maiden for comfort, we pray for the stranger for love, and whatever.
And Arya says, Father. Yeah, so
that was great. Must have been one of my favorite duos of people traveling together and stuff.
Oh yeah.
At one point, the Hound catches Arya practicing her water dance. He's like, water dancing, and she's like, I trained under Syrio Forel, the best swords master in the world. He died fighting Meryn Trant. He's like, the best swordsman in the world died fighting Meryn effing Trant. And she's like, he was outnumbered. Oh, well, he wouldn't fight with, like, the way he was talking, like, it sounded like a...
she has to say, well, he didn't have a sword, he had a stick.
Yeah,
the best, he had a stick.
He had a stick. An older brother talking to a younger sister, like, oh, you think you can beat me in a fight? Or no? Like, I love the whole thing so much. At one point, when she started laughing at the Bloodgate at the Eyrie, when, like, they tell that Lysa is dead, and she just bursts out laughing. Like, the first time in the whole series she's laughed, probably, Arya Stark.
Yes, yeah.
So funny and so good, and seeing, like, the Hound's face, like, I'm not getting paid, am I? And Arya just start, like, just keeling over laughing was so good.
Yeah, and it just paid off, really. That was one of the relationships that paid off at the end, and when they're headed back out to King's Landing in season 8, and he says, are you going to leave me for dead? Or that might have happened even earlier. Are you going to leave me for dead again? And she says, probably. So
that great Quentin Tarantino-esque moment when they would go into the bar of all the Lannister soldiers,
right.
And he says, like, as like a metaphor, he's like, if one more word comes out of your C-bomb mouth, I'm going to have to eat every chicken in this room. The fact that was such a good fight scene. The fact that, like, I remember it was when he had one of, like, the bad guys in his grasp, and he had, like, the knife on the ground. He's, like, bashing the guy's head in, like, onto the knife. Like, so brutal and stuff. But the Hound has always been one of the favorites. Just, like, kind of like Tyrion. He won't, approach or reproach, whatever that word is, for Joffrey publicly. But it always seemed like such a cool, like, semi-honorable guy. Like, all his interactions with like Sansa calling her like little bird and like being like,
right.
you know, he didn't save her. He offered.
He tried to save
But
her,
he-
and
but
he
he-
saved her when she was about to push Joffrey off
Yeah, off
the bridge.
precipice, whatever. And he also
Right.
kept, of course, Sansa from being sexually assaulted at one time by like,
Right,
ripping a guy's guts
yes,
out with his
yes.
bare
So
fists.
he was not a bad guy at all.
He was. I love the Hound. He was so
Yes.
good. Good old Sandor. Season 4, so good. Lots of good stuff. It's not a great scene, but when Ramsay Snow was made Ramsay Bolton, and like and Bruce is like, look, Simba, this kingdom, everything like touches is our kingdom and stuff, making him officially a non-bastard. It wasn't a great scene, obviously, because we don't have any love towards Ramsay. But like the fact that like we are able to see someone as terrible and psychotic as Ramsay, who's wanted something his whole life, and that's obviously built up a lot of insecurities in his life of being a bastard, being made a real person. Like you see, like, you know, semi-real joy come to his face, which is weird because to see, like, you know, we don't get kicks out of seeing Joffrey get his kicks out of murdering prostitutes and stuff with a crossbow bolt, but to see Ramsay, who's been kind of on the back foot, being like, you know, a lower person in society as a bastard, get not like what he deserves because he was always a terrible person, but to see like humanity in someone like Ramsay being like, I just want to be accepted by my dad, you know.
Right.
And some books,
Yeah, because I think that he was a psychopath, and that probably had nothing to do with being a bastard. But he did have a big hole in his heart, wanting to be loved by his dad, which is wanting to be loved is a theme of a lot of these characters. And let's face it, through lots of literature and TV shows and characters everywhere. But yeah, absolutely, because he says, okay, you know, you will carry on the name and
of Bolton. It's weird
Right.
though because Ramsay's given like motivation and stuff like that to impress his father and to do well and to use Reek and to use Theon to get Kate Mott or whatever and become a good soldier to his father to impress him. And that gave him, like, you know, reasoning and motivation to do things. But for Joffrey, it's like, is Joffrey just a kid just playing with toys as human beings, you know? Because, like, Ramsay, it's like, okay, he wants this goal to become a non-bastard and a true heir son to his father. But Joffrey is like, he just wants to have fun killing people. Like, you know, it was just cool how, like, at least Ramsay had a goal. Like, you know, what did Joffrey ever want in life?
Oh,
Like,
right.
Ramsay, all he wanted was become a non-bastard. But Joffrey's like, I'm a dick, and I wanted to shoot
yeah,
people.
I'm just evil, and I'm sure he pulled the wings off of flies or whatever when he was a little kid and killed toads and
I mean, they're both
everything else.
terrible people, obviously. I'm just saying it's
Right, it's
interesting that
different, right.
Ramsay had, like, some semi-motivation for stuff.
Right, and Joffrey was just evil. I mean,
Mm.
and not that Ramsay wasn't, but you're right. There was something, and like I said, it's hard to know. We've talked about this before. It's hard to know, was that just the way he was, or was it partly because of
His
growing up the way
upbringing.
he did? Right.
But he was born a
But-
rich white person
Yeah,
in this
he
world.
was,
Just
right.
like, as like, you know, the prince, but he was still
Yes.
so pompous and arrogant and stuff.
His father never denied him or
Gave him
or,
a time of day, apparently, though, too.
Yeah, or
Mm.
you know, he was well provided for. So I don't know if everything he did was just all about that, or if he just also was a cruel person.
Joffrey
who,
was the worst.
Yeah, got off on
Maybe
being
not the
cruel
worst.
to-
But
right.
also, let's go back to fathers real quick. Ned Stark is such a great man. The fact that you're able to look back, like, you know, Ned Stark was a great guy, but then you look back in season 6, like, yeah, he took a hit for his honor in having a bastard to keep his nephew safe that he promised to his sister as she died, you know? Like, Ned Stark, such a good man, you know? Like, and Jon says, like, he was the most honorable man I'll ever know. Like, you were right, Jon. Like, he was wise. He kept secrets that he had to because he promised his dying sister. Like,
Right, yeah.
What a great man. Like, what a great lesson to be learned. Ned could have been honorable and told Robert the truth and gotten Jon killed as a Targaryen bastard, which technically Jon, well, he wasn't Targaryen bastard. He was just Targaryen.
Right.
Like, Ned could have been
Although
honorable.
Ned wouldn't have known that.
Because he didn't know they were married, but
Right.
still, like, he could have told Robert the truth, but he just said,
That
like,
it
oh,
was
yes,
right.
Lyanna died from her wounds that Rhaegar gave her.
Yes,
Technically, she did die of the wounds that Oh, hey-oh.
That's one way to look at it, I guess.
The miracle of childbirth. But yeah, so Ned Stark, I just love his whole arc and story and him, and the fact that, you know, Robert's dying on his deathbed and Ned doesn't tell him that Joffrey's a bastard and
Right.
that, like, he could have told him that, but, like, you know, to have the strength to tell your best friend as he dies like, you know, because imagine how bad Robert would have felt if he knew the truth.
Yes, I mean,
Like,
it was a real kindness to not tell him.
was it the smartest thing for the whole future of the whole series? Probably not, but I mean,
But it was a kindness.
Yeah.
So, you know, he made the best decision that he could at that moment, and why he did not want to burden Robert with that.
because even though Robert was about to die too, you know, I mean, who boy.
Yeah.
Season 4 though, it ended. Season 4 had like the most plot lines like ever. So you had the people at Craster's Keep, you had Bran at Craster's Keep, you had Potherod and Brienne traveling around, you had Arya and the Hound traveling around, you had Littlefinger and Sansa traveling around, you had Cersei, you had Tyrion's trial, you had Oberyn's quest, you had a lot of plot lines in season 4.
Right,
A lot of stuff happened.
Right.
But so like when season 4 ended with like Arya sailing to Braavos with Jaqen's coin and stuff, that and other stuff ending in season 4, it was really cool. Like that, probably the season that ended that hyped me up the most. You know.
Yeah, it was very good, and I think that may have been a lot of times that's about the point where hour-long shows hit their peak is season 3, 4, around there, and it then becomes really difficult, I think, to maintain that. So like the early seasons sort of build and get better and better, and then I mean I've seen this pattern with a lot of shows, and then after that they have a hard time, you know, continuing to hit those home runs.
But we've been on season 4 for a while here. But season 4 was great. Probably one of the best by far. I love also how the seasons also kind of have almost themes to them. Like season 1 was kind of like, oh, this is the whole pilot season. This is introducing stuff. This is kind of a open handshake to the whole world of Game of Thrones. Like season 2 was more of a build on that. I feel like there've been some like seasons of intrigue, like season 4, but I also feel like season 4 was also there've been some recovery seasons. I feel like season 6 and season 4, like season 3 had the Red Wedding, and that was really dark. So I feel like season 4, the first like few episodes of season 4 were like, oh gosh, what happened? I mean, this is a terrible world, but man,
we need some comic
this is
relief
real dark
here.
here. Also, season 5, which we'll get to now, just so depressing. Like season 4, I'm like, I'm so excited for season 5. Like season 5 had like all of Stannis being a bad guy and burning his daughter alive, and like the whole, you can argue that Stannis Baratheon's whole plot line was kind of dumb because it ended up doing nothing anyway. But also the fact that you drag out all these things, that when you kill Ramsay Bolton in season 6, it was worth it. It felt rewarded. You felt we suffered enough here. But season 5, yeah, it had some pretty decent moments. Obviously, Hardhome was super awesome, a great scene and action and stuff. Season 5, what else happened here? Let's think. It's kind of hard to think about some of the stuff because there's a lot of.
I thought Stannis was just such a bore, and he was supposed to be, and that's the way people talked about him. But he was just so boring and so misguided. He was just terribly misguided in all of his decisions.
There were scenes because like he's a master tactician or whatever. He's like, I don't know, but the fact that he had that scene of Shireen. Where at one point, I think they were at Castle Black at that point, but he says, like, all the Maesters wanted to send you to the Stonemen in Valeria. They wanted to give up on my daughter, but I said, screw them all. I decided that we were going to make you live, you know? Like, he cares about his daughter, which, like, oh, yeah, this is what kind of like Stannis. Stannis isn't the worst guy who'd been there on the throne. And then 5 episodes later, he's burning his daughter alive.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, yeah, screw this guy. He's the worst.
Even though he wouldn't let them send her away to the island or whatever of the Stonemen.
Old Valyria for Stonemen.
He did let his wife basically seclude her in a room. It seemed like, when
his daughter as well. He was he cared about his daughter, but he also ashamed of her.
Yes,
because of her grayscale and stuff, and also the fact that she wasn't a man.
Yeah,
because he wanted sons.
Right, of course he did.
Stannis was so boring. Obviously this is the infamous season where Sansa and Ramsay Bolton get.
And I can't.
Yeah, terrible.
Watch it
terribleness.
Anymore.
Just so freaking dour and sad. This season, Arya is getting beaten up constantly by people, probably. What else happened? Tyrion. Tyrion has some good stuff. He met Jorah.
Yes.
And they had their little romp and journey and stuff. And I forgot, in season 4 there was a great scene which just highlights the great thing about Jorah. Dario and Dany sleep together for the first time. And Jorah catches like it's almost like a lame drama. Jorah catches Dario leaving Dany's room in the morning, and Dario's like, "Oh, sorry, Jorah. I didn't get much sleep last night. Yeah, there was a lot of yelling up here. Oh, sorry, I'm just kind of sweaty. Didn't get much sleep. Oh, well, anyway, I hope the girl he loves. See you later, and like pats him on the back. Oh, she's in a good mood, you know. The fact that Jorah was so like, you want my advice on Dario? Maybe you shouldn't sleep with him. I mean, maybe we shouldn't kill all these masters, Danny. But the fact that that scene of like just Jorah being Sir Friend Zoned constantly, and the fact that he caught like, you know, it's like catching your ex-girlfriend with like her new bae or whatever. It's like, all right, she's in a good mood, pal. Go in there.
And
like
Dario is just like so self-satisfied, so smug, and
Jorah's face just like like the floor. I love that scene as well.
And then he goes in, and if there was any doubt, it's like I read something about the costume, what they had her Danny wearing when Jorah comes in that morning, and it was like very sexy, and they went to a lot of trouble to make it look like something she would be wearing, with her all this sexual confidence that would make Jorah just even feel that much worse. So it worked, I guess.
Yeah, but that was just a funny scene.
Just like, but Dario
is so lame.
Fun.
He's just.
I thought he was fun.
He was fun,
I say
but
Dario was fun at the same time you say he was lame.
But the fact that Dario also, we'll get to it later. But season 5, going back to it real quick, a lot of depressing stuff. Hardhome was cool. This is one of the kind of the dumb High Sparrow stuff, which is one of those classic things where it's like, when there's a villain like Ramsay Bolton, you're like, oh, this sucks. But when there's like a High Sparrow who it's like, oh, the gods demand we must sacrifice it. The fact when like the cult stuff starts to happen, it's like, oh my, this is why people hate religion and stuff. Like, because the cult, oh, the maiden would want to give mercy, but oh, the stranger would want justice. So out of the gods speak through me, so you must get castrated or whatever. Like, it's, God, what, I hate the High Sparrow thing.
Yeah.
But
was
all of
not good.
Danny kind of had to start facing her own trials as like a ruler, and she kind of failed pretty badly. Season 5, anything else?
It's the one season I really just can't watch most of.
That's one of the seasons where it's like, this is a sad, and then season 6 is kind of a upbeat, trying to recover from recovery season of all this.
Because 5 is just not a lot of fun.
So I think that's it for season 5. Season 6 is where like, some people argue that because season 6 is when, of course, it started going off book, because, of course, Jon was killed at the end of season 5, and that was kind of a cliffhanger for the books as well, as far as I'm concerned. There was that dumb plotline in season 5 where they go to Dorne.
Oh,
that was pretty dumb.
Right.
But yeah, so season 6 is when they went off book, and some people were like, yeah, this is kind of getting loosey-goosey here. Some people were a little less than... like, you know, liking it and loving it, because like this is the first time they had to go off book for the first time ever in the whole show. But season 6 was awesome because they had so many great, like, you know, Jon and Sansa reuniting and all that great stuff of like, yes, we're finally having some freaking victories here. We met Lyanna Mormont. No one cares about Cersei. Jaime had that great moment where he went to the siege in Riverrun, and the Freys are like doing their classic Monty Python, like, I will slit bloody Lord Esmo's throat if you do. And Blackfish is like, go ahead then, slit his throat. He says it Blackfish says it just like that, and it's awesome. Edmure is a prisoner of House Frey. Only a fool makes a threat he's not prepared to carry out. Now let's say I threatened to hit you unless you shut your mouth, but you kept talking. What do you think I'd do? I don't give a rat's up. Boom! She punches him. He backhands him with a metal golden hand to the face, and like seeing a Frey get punched in the face is always great.
Right.
But Jaime is a commander, and when he did that, just like, yeah, this is why I like Jaime. You know, he's a smooth talker. He's arrogant, but he deserves it because he's good in this world. You know,
and he handled that with, you know, he attempted to handle it with no loss of life and with as little loss of life as possible, I guess.
Season 6, anything else you liked about it? Anything, Davos being cool? I loved how Davos has always been kind of like a front man to many good leaders and just being a good guy. Jon got back from the dead. He was dead, now he's alive. That was kind of weird. Lord Light was never explained, so who cares about that plot line? I loved it when the giant burst in to save... The wildlings came to save Jon's corpse.
Right,
and
right.
1-1, like... He got shot with like a crossbow bolt, but he grabs the guy like through the mantle and just like slams him against the wall, and then everyone just puts their weapons down.
I loved the giants that we met. Well, there was only one left by that point, but
unfortunately, good old 1-1. Cool. Yeah. I am the last one, but season 6 was pretty great. The Battle of Bastard was filmed and looked amazing, and then Season 6 had some pretty great. Like they had the Septa Baelor explosion and the Battle of Bastards. That like back-to-back
big
episodes.
stuff.
That's some
Right,
big stuff.
Right. A lot of people died. A lot of people died in the Septa Baelor episode because, in addition to the people who were inside there, which was a lot of, they maybe weren't all major characters. Like Mace Tyrell was not a major
I
character.
loved Mace Tyrell.
But
Are you kidding me?
He was recurring. You know, he was a recurring character.
They lost Kevin
And
Lannister.
Right.
Kevin Lannister. I think it's with like, God, what a stupid. But I think it's like KEVAAVVAN.
Oh, is it? Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course
With
it
like an
is.
E at the E after the end, probably.
But then in addition to the people inside, then you lost Tommen
And Marjorie.
And, when Marjorie was in there, and there were a lot of people who died in that episode.
Season 6 was awesome, though.
Yeah.
Man, there was some great.
It
We
was
met
good.
Lyanna. Stannis was dead, so we didn't have to worry about that dumb plot line anymore.
Right.
Bolton. I watched a great video online where I just had a hunch of like Ramsay Bolton getting punched for 10 hours. It was a YouTube video of just which is always fun. But yeah, Ramsay Bolton being eaten alive by dogs, that was pretty great.
Oh yeah, that was perfect. Even though I can't,
Great.
I have to like cover up my ears and
Lot
can't
of-
listen. But
yeah.
it was perfect.
A lot of great moments, just like seeing Ramsay finally getting what he deserved, which is getting eaten by his own dogs, was poetic and great and awesome. Season 7, jump right. Anything else to say about season 6? Anything else or?
No, I think
What a great show, man.
I know, and the more like you said, I think 4 might be the best season. I would have to really think about it. More,
there was a great.
But then 7.
Yeah. There,
Yes?
sorry, continue. Sorry. So Theon also went back to his family, went back to the Pike and stuff, because and he supports Yara at the hearing of the idiots at
Right.
at Pike.
Yes.
He's like, "This is your ruler. No one's more brave than my sister." Because like. He had the chance, like, Yara was like, what are you doing back here? You come back conveniently when there's a power struggle happening.
Yes,
but,
yeah.
like, the fact that he supported Yara completely and was a good, like, the start of Theon's redemption
Absolutely,
after also he
right.
saved Sansa's life
Right.
from Miranda with a Y.
Yeah, when they jumped off.
That
into
was
the
dumb.
snow,
Have you ever seen the movie The Other Guys, starring Will Ferrell and guy from Transformers 4?
No,
but-
no, I haven't.
When they jumped off the castle battlement in season 5, that was really dumb and weird. 'Cause I thought like, oh, why did they commit suicide? That was kind of strange. But I guess the snow saved their lives. But
Yeah, I mean, they weren't jumping that far, and it was in the snow, and it was far enough that I think they weren't in the best shape. They were pretty sore afterwards.
yeah, I guess so.
And then
but-
Theon tried to say, "Oh, Sansa broke her leg, and then she died." After as a way to convince when they got found. But that was
Yeah.
the beginning of his redemption. But you're right, when he goes and supports Yara completely and doesn't want to be king, then that's really what sets everything else in motion
Yeah.
for him.
And because I think season 6 had so many great just reprieves from all the depressing because just look at season 5, like even like everything is just overcast, everything's just dark.
Yes.
Also, great scene from season 5 where Mance Rayder said, "The freedom to make my own mistakes is all I ever wanted."
Right.
Perfect thing
Yeah.
to say by the king behind the wall or whatever. But season 6 so great just to have some freaking victories. You know, like
Yeah.
we saw Stannis Baratheon get absolutely butchered by all the Boltons, but now we see people win. We see the Stark banners fly over Winterfell again.
Oh,
You're
I
like,
know, that's a
yes,
great
that's what
moment.
I want to
Yeah,
see.
right.
You know.
Yeah.
Season 6 was great. Season 7 was when it started kind of getting loosey-goosey, but of course the Loot Train attack / Battle of the Gold Road looked amazing. Seeing what it looks like to release these fully grown 17-ton dragons on people is like, yeah, this is why Dany will win, you know?
Right. And I thought Jaime was gone. I mean, I really did think Jaime was dead.
I mean, he was wearing full plate armor. He had a bowling ball strapped to his hand, and like,
right.
but luckily Luckily, the river that was moving at a very slow pace rushed him down, so he go
and
out of the
couldn't
water.
breathe and was far enough away so nobody could see him.
That's when kind of dumb stuff started to happen like that.
Yeah.
But overall, season 7 was great for spectacle. It was dumb how they decided to go up north to get the body, and then Cersei betrayed them anyway, and they were dumb to trust Cersei in the first place, or go even near the dragon pit when they had that armistice. Like, guys, Cersei doesn't care. She's going to blow up the Sept of Baelor. She's going to blow up the Sept of the dragon
Right.
pit. Like,
Yeah, I always wondered, and there were things that started to happen that for me should have paid off and never did. Like when Tyrion was talking to her, And they cut away after he realized you're pregnant. And they cut away, and the next thing that you saw was Tyrion coming out to say, and Cersei coming out with him to say that she is going to support them in this battle. I thought there had to be something we missed, that we didn't get to see because they cut away, that later we would find out about. Like
the Elmo scene from YouTube where Elmo's like, maybe you should love each other. I showed you that clip, right?
Yes. Yeah, right. But I was thinking he had to promise her something. There is something we don't know about that meeting that convinced her. And then, of course, we find out she's not really planning to help. But even then, I still thought, there was something, because Tyrion thinks she's going to help, and he promised her something. It can't be just that she's pregnant and he convinced her that she cares about her baby. It has to be something else. And I was really worried about that for a long time, that like maybe he had promised himself in return and sacrificed himself,
but then nothing happened for a season and a half or whatever.
It never came up again. And there were a few things like that throughout the series that really bothered me, because I felt like they were setting something up that never paid off. And maybe that was me reading too much into it.
But it's pretty fair for you to think there's more to this. Like, I think Varys didn't just talk to a 6-year-old and try to poison a queen who definitely wouldn't eat and write a few letters. Like, Varys has a grand plan,
right.
But Varys had a terrible plan.
Not really. He didn't really.
So I'm not gonna go. Yeah. We're not gonna go into season 8 probably, because we've already kind of talked about a lot of stuff. But season 7, I loved because it's been good spectacle. But going back to kind of just good talking and dialogue, when Olenna told Jaime that she was the one who poisoned Joffrey, she's like, "Oh, thank you for not taking off my head at King's Landing." Jaime takes a sip of the poison, and she's like, "Oh, by the way, I killed Joffrey. Tell Cersei it was me." Like the fact that the Queen of Thorns, she lost, financially / armily. What's the word? Militarily at Highgarden. She'd still be able to get the last laugh and be like, "Oh, by the way, boosh."
Right.
Like, Jaime didn't say anything left.
Yeah, he didn't stab her. I mean, he still could have made her end very painful. She had taken the poison, but he could have, I don't know, he could have gone after her.
But it's so, just so neat and good, good
yes,
good moment.
But it was a perfect Olenna moment, and that she said, "I want Cersei I want her to know." And
good on her, people like, what we deserve and what happens in the show. Like, Jaime kind of deserved getting killed by bricks because he did a lot of bad stuff in his day. But, Olenna playing the Game of Thrones, she's able to get one last stinger as she died. Good for her.
Yeah. And, I mean, she survived a long time in a position of power, and I think people underestimated her. And
which is cool. Which is cool because, people like Marjorie Tyrell, who, her death wasn't some fanatic, some crazy cool Ocean's 11 where but I tricked you the whole time. She died in an explosion,
Right.
People don't get the best endings in the show, like we've learned.
And she did not die stupid. She realized what was happening, too.
That stupid sept of whatever, High Septon was like, "Oh, I'm smart and religious. We must all stay together."
Right. And but even if he hadn't done that, I don't know if she would have been able to get out in time. But definitely that was the idea, that she realized it and she could have gotten out. I guess so. Yeah, she was not an idiot. She was a character who was smart and did all the right things and died in spite of it. But Lady Olenna was very smart, and I love that moment when they're there together, when he just comes walking in and she says, "Is it over?" or whatever.
Yeah.
Did they fight bravely? And
he said under the circumstances, whatever.
Yes. So
I always loved the dialogue. Has always been the highlight of the show. Obviously, they talked to when Jaime said Rickon, Dickon, and Bron's like, but he's like, Bron's like, men shit themselves when they die. Just all the a million quotes you could say, put on bumper stickers and use, and just it's good. Also loved another good dialogue kind of representation scene of relationships was when when Jon Snow met with Daenerys Targaryen for the first time, and she said, Miss Sandy does, "Oh, she is the breaker of chains, mother of dragons, freer of Meereen, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, king of the Andals and the First Men, first of her name, the Unburnt, one more? Stormborn, probably one more in there. And then Davos is like, this is Jon
Jon
Snow.
Snow.
He's a king of the North. Just so the fact that, like we said later season in the last season, that Dany has always come off as entitled, as like, oh, it's my birthright
Yes,
to own the
right.
throne. This is me personally. I get to own everything. But Jon having to literally come from nothing as well. He came from nothing. Like, he was a bastard. While
right.
Daenerys at least had like a Stark had like a crazy Targaryen loyal royal name.
Right.
But like Jon coming from nothing, becoming a king, he didn't want to be king, but he was given that position, and he's trying to do his best. He never wanted that. And the fact that he didn't have some grand, like, oh, this is Jon Snow, a slayer of White Walkers, better of one woman, and he died, come back from life, and like he obviously didn't prepare that with Davos, But of course, Missandei's like, all right, Dany, I'm gonna do. It gives him a huge list,
Here
and
we go.
the fact it's so cool that like Jon didn't want this. He doesn't care about sounding regal or sounding impressive. He just wants the dragon glass.
Right. He just wants to get the job done.
He wants to save his
Yeah.
people. Well, Dany is like, oh, I'm the best. I'm the mother of dragons. I can do everything. I'm the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms. Like, just comparing that, just one scene explains the whole relationship right there. Like, Jon doesn't care. Like, Jon chose to bend the knee eventually because he doesn't care about royalty or about winning the war. He wants the whole North to survive, like
right. And that's all he ever wanted. And that does remind me another one of those things, though, that I think never paid off. There's that moment when Dany asks about something that was said that about Jon coming back to life, but it hadn't been real clear. And she asked, and Jon was like, shook his head, like, don't tell her. But then when she did find out, because they talked about it openly in season 8, there was nothing that really came from that. Like, so why did he not want her to know initially?
I don't know, because I guess it's a pretty cool thing to brag about on your MySpace page
Right.
that I came back from the dead, YOLO.
I mean, maybe that's
Actually,
all it is.
YOLO,
that he-
YOLO 2, YOLT.
There you
You only
go.
live twice.
Right.
But
so
yeah, that was
maybe
kinda
that
weird.
was all it was, but they just made such a big deal out of him saying, no, don't tell him. And him saying, oh, these people in the North, they have these these people in the North are crazy.
Maybe they called Jon Snow a ghost if they knew he died or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was weird. But
Also, another good quote, Hodor.
yes.
Hodor. Said by Hodor. So season 8, we've already talked to death about it, but there's some pretty decent moments. I love Tormund Giantsbane's origin story. I love Pod the Rod's origin story, obviously. In season 3, I believe, where he got the aforementioned name. So much great dialogue. Like, no matter what, if I had to choose between the show having a terrible beginning and a great ending, I would choose that. But at least we have a great beginning and a mediocre ending.
Yeah.
It's not like I haven't seen Lost, but like from what you said, like it had a mediocre start, probably a pretty good middle, and then a really crappy end.
Yeah, well, it was much more like a roller coaster than that. Like, it started strong, and then
Reached
they
a
couldn't
peak,
figure
and
out
then-
what to do, and then they figured out what to do, and it was very up and down. But to me, not much of it is really rewatchable. Like, I have never gone back and watched it all again. Certain episodes I've seen more than once, but I've never had the desire to watch it over from beginning to end. But I really do think, I'm curious about what people will think a year from now if they think about it. And
Did we do the right thing? Ask me in 10
Yes.
years.
Right.
That's a Double D talking to HBO executives.
right, I feel really bad for Double D and all the other people.
I don't.
And
When you start something, even if you're 10 years into the journey, you finish it well.
right, and like my friend said, they were paid $15 million an episode, whatever, a year, whatever, to do this job. And but I do think, now that I've read a little bit more, because I don't know why I thought at one point HBO didn't want to go on because it was so expensive, but as was actually the two of them, HBO wanted it to continue.
Yeah, like they wanted 10 episodes, Double D's wanted 6, but continue.
Well, they apparently one of the big reasons they didn't want to go on with season after season of 10 episodes was because they had run out of the source material. And it is true that some people are better at adapting material than writing original material. And maybe they knew that, and maybe that's why it suffered and they didn't want to continue.
It's weird because the first 4-5 seasons of the show were based on 5 books basically. So we're like, oh, these are such great writers for the first 5 seasons. We're like, no, George R. R. Martin's a great writer. Why are we giving the Double D's all this credit? But I'm honestly sick of talking about all this because they messed it up, and I don't care anymore because I love this show. I'll remember the good things.
Right,
you know?
there you go.
This show had, like I said, it has 1,000 quotes from this show. Just decent life lessons, like just good encapsulations of people, like flawed human beings going on their journey, man. But
yeah, and some excellent characters, some characters that I love.
Great dialogue, great acting. Overall, it's gonna have a great. I want to say it's gonna have a great kind of lasting impact on social media, on on society / the marketplace of television in general. But the fact that it ended so crappily does end up leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth. But hopefully people remember the good times. I mean, I'm sound like I'm describing my ex here. Like we had some the bad one.
I learned some things.
The end wasn't that great, but the beginning was great. It's a shame that it ended this way, but I think it overall will have a pretty good standing of, I hope HBO has another great, huge scale thing like this someday because, Game of Thrones is so thick and huge of all these houses and people
right.
and a million cast members and giant sets and stuff. Like, unless there are movies, there never going to be a show like this ever again.
Well, I know the perfect trilogy of books that they could do something like this with, and that they should, but I'm afraid that the writer of them is probably not interested. But the fact that Game of Thrones could be done shows me that some of my favorite books, probably like my second or third favorite book, is the first book in this trilogy.
Well, tell me, what is it?
It is called The Baroque Cycle by Neil Stephenson. And the first book is called Quicksilver. And it's really deeply, the first book is like 890 pages or something. And then the next 2 in the trilogy are just as long. And many characters, many locations. It's not fantasy, but just lots and lots of different locations. It involves real historical figures mixed with fictional characters. And I think that it would just make an excellent show like this. But I don't know that there's a lot of that kind of material out there.
It's cool too because we live in obviously a world where a book cannot be made only to a movie like Jaws or something.
Right.
Like they can make a TV show out of it, and that way they can season by season kind of off the cuff adjust to how people view it.
Yes.
Or how because American Gods, which is a book apparently by Neil Gaiman, that's a TV show on something.
I don't know.
I think it's Amazon now or something. But it's very interesting. But it's at the same time they can always adjust to season by season because it's not a movie,
Yes. Well, and Dan and Dave did do some changes. Like they didn't just strictly adapt what the books were for the first 5 seasons.
Tyrion kept his nose.
There were different things that happened, and in fact, the guy who played Barristan Selmy, I saw a whiny article interview thing with him recently because in the books he was still alive.
That's
at
right.
The end of 5 books, and he dies very early, and he's an important character. He saves Dany from assassination. And
that interview was but
he was
supposed
crying.
to be. Yeah.
He was whinging, as the Hound would say. He was whinging about it. So they did do some things, and it is hard, I think. It takes skill to take something that's written on the page and adapt it to a visual medium.
I mean, they didn't just take the books and just here's the script, boys.
Right,
they had to obviously shave off the fat and stuff.
But I do think, though, that there are probably people who are better at creating new shows, fictional shows, than they are at adapting, and vice versa.
It's so hard though, because so some of us say we want original scripts, then we get something like a Jupiter Ascending movie.
Yeah.
Where it's I doubt I even remember that. But it's because I actually did a podcast with my friend Timothy about Aladdin recently.
Uh-huh.
It's a kind of argument of why is Disney not making anything original if they just want to do cash grabs and do live action remakes? And it's the whole thing of doing an adaptation of anything can be risky because it's just playing it safe. You're not doing something new and original. But at the same time, what are you gonna do? I mean, there's a lot of stories to be told out there that's already been told in book form, but
Well, I would much rather see somebody attempt to adapt a book, which probably even a popular book most people haven't read, than do things like now they're making TV shows out of things that were only movies in the past that weren't books. And there's, like how many, and I cannot tell you how sick to death I am of Spider-Man.
what?
I'm sorry. How long, some more time needs to pass before they reinvent Spider-Man all the time? I know, but how many Spider-Men do I have to learn to like?
It's because it's a lot. It's a lot of this stuff being rebooted. Maybe we're getting too off topic here, but like you're right. Like in comics in particular, like comic books have changed so much where it's like here's Captain America but as a Nazi. Like they do so much change to the characters, it's hard for us to keep track and to be invested. But overall, back to Game of Thrones, I'm glad that it was a decent show that will have a good memory in my heart, my deepest soul, and being great quotes I'm going to add on bumper stickers and to put on coffee cups. But overall, pretty good show. I hope you agree.
Yes, absolutely. I loved it.
If you want to talk more about like some good book ideas, I'd love to talk about it too, because there's lots of talk about reboots and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Maybe we can see a new Spider-Man. I can defend it as you murder it virtuously.
I just want Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. That's how old I am.
Hey, I was like 5 when those movies came out. I remember. I was a younger man.
I liked Toby. I loved Tobey Maguire. Then I was like, he's gonna be Spider-Man.
What did you think of the dancing
cool.
thing?
But I generally like when people readapt things or do a cover song or whatever, however you want to describe it.
So speaking of adapting things,
yes.
Sorry, we're almost an hour 30 here.
Yes.
So any final thoughts about Game of Thrones before we close the podcast forever?
I agree with you. I think that it was really enjoyable. I have loved watching it. I've loved all the excitement with it. And I think I will always like it, and it may be something I revisit from time to time in the future.
And we'll always have the Funko Pops to remind us of the good times.
That's right. Yay,
So closing out,
Funko
I'm
Pops.
Drew.
I'm Becky.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.